Chapter 1: The Fallacy of Systemic Racism. 1.1 Defining Systemic Racism. Systemic racism, also known as institutional racism, is a form of racism that is embedded in the very fabric of society. It is a complex and insidious form of discrimination that can be difficult to identify and address. However, it is essential to understand systemic racism in order to combat it. One way to define systemic racism is to look at the ways in which it manifests itself in society. Systemic racism can be seen in the disproportionate representation of people of color in poverty, unemployment, and the criminal justice system. It can also be seen in the ways in which people of color are treated in schools, the workplace, and the healthcare system. Another way to define systemic racism is to look at the underlying causes of these disparities. Systemic racism is caused by a combination of individual and institutional factors. Individual factors include the racist attitudes and beliefs of individuals. Institutional factors include the policies and practices of institutions that perpetuate racial inequality. For example, the criminal justice system in the United States is a prime example of systemic racism. The system is biased against people of color at every level, from the police to the courts to the prisons. This bias is reflected in the fact that people of color are more likely to be arrested, convicted, and sentenced to prison than white people, even for the same crimes. Systemic racism is a serious problem that has a devastating impact on the lives of people of color. It is essential to understand systemic racism in order to combat it. By working together, we can create a more just and equitable society for all. Here are some examples of systemic racism: the criminal justice system, which disproportionately arrests, convicts, and incarcerates people of color. The education system, which tracks students of color into lower-level classes and disciplines them more harshly than white students. The healthcare system, which provides unequal care to people of color and often ignores their health needs. The housing market, which discriminates against people of color and makes it difficult for them to find affordable housing. The job market, which discriminates against people of color and pays them less than white people for the same work. Systemic racism is a complex and pervasive problem, but it is one that we can overcome. By working together, we can create a more just and equitable society for all. 1.2
Sample complete. Ready to continue?